So this is section 2.3, other types of graphs. In the last section, we talked about three kinds of graphs: histograms, frequency polygons, and ogives that were used to show what's going on when you have a grouped frequency distribution. Now today in this section, we're going to talk about some other kinds of graphs that are used in other kinds of situations. There are more kinds of graphs than what we're going to talk about, but the ones we're going to see today are among the more common, the ones you'll see most often maybe. So first of all, bar graphs are graphs that use bars, either going up vertically or across horizontally, to represent frequencies. So a histogram is one type of bar graph, but there are other bar graphs that aren't histograms. And one specific kind of bar graph that we're going to talk about here is what's called a Pareto chart. A Pareto chart is something that looks kind of like this, and when you see them, you might or might not see this line here that looks like an ogive that's part of the chart. We won't really talk about that, so you can just ignore this, but if you go looking at Pareto charts that other people have drawn, they may or may not include this as part of the graph. But what makes a Pareto chart is you've got categorical data. You've got a bunch of different categories, and then the individual data values all fall into one of those categories. And the Pareto chart shows you the frequencies of the different categories arranged in order, so that you can see what's most common and next most common and so on, and how much more common the most common thing is compared to the others. So a Pareto chart is a bar chart used for a categorical variable, like the nominal level of measurement. The heights of the bars correspond to the frequencies of the categories, and the categories are arranged in order from greatest to smallest frequency. If they're not arranged in order, it doesn't really count as a Pareto chart. So let's say, for example, a restaurant has been keeping track of the things that its customers complain about. So every time they get a complaint about something, they make a note of that. They keep track of what kinds of complaints they get about what kinds of things. And here are the results. So in the time period where they were keeping track, they got 19 complaints about bad food, 33 complaints about slow service, rude servers, 7 complaints, ugly decor, 5 complaints, uncomfortable seating, 89 complaints. And so if we display this as a Pareto chart, here's what it looks like. And you can see what came first on the Pareto chart was the thing that there were more complaints about than anything else: uncomfortable seating. So that's the tallest bar, and you can see that it's more than twice as tall as the next highest bar. It's way taller than any of the others. So if you are managing this restaurant and you wanted to do one thing to improve your customer satisfaction, maybe the one thing you should focus on first is getting some more comfortable seating. Okay, so now let's try us drawing one of these Pareto charts for ourselves. You can either do this by hand, like on paper, or you can do it using a computer, and I will show you both ways. First, we'll just go ahead and draw it ourselves on graph paper, but then I'll show you how you could use Excel to generate a Pareto chart. So this is based on an example that we saw earlier in a previous section about we had all those different animals that came in to see the veterinarian, and we constructed a frequency distribution that showed how many of each kind of animal there were. Turned out to be 14 cats and 19 dogs, 2 birds, 4 hamsters, and 1 elephant, 40 in all. So if we were going to represent that with a Pareto chart, Remember, it has to go in order of frequency. So which one comes first? The first bar on the chart should be for the dogs. And that should go up to a height of 19. Remember, you do need to keep a consistent scale. So there should be the same amount of space from the bottom line, the horizontal axis, up to 1, as there is from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on. So this bar really is 19 squares tall on the graph paper. Then the next category, next highest in frequency, would be cat. So we put a bar for the cats and make that 14 squares tall. Then hamster, bird, and elephant. And notice I made them all the same width, 4 squares wide, but the height was given by the frequency. Now let me show you how you might ask Excel to draw you a Pareto chart. I'm going to go ahead and enter the data in frequency order. So I'm going to put dog first with a frequency of 19, and then cat with a frequency of 14. Then there were hamsters, 4 of them, bird, frequency 2, and elephant, frequency 1. There are ways to ask Excel to sort your data for you if they're not already in order. You'll see that when we talk about how to do the project. But for right now, since I'm entering this, I just went ahead and entered it in frequency order, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. Now, this is the data that this is going to be based on. I've gone ahead and typed it into these first 2 columns, first 5 rows, and now I'm going to go up to Insert, click on that tab, and ask it to insert one of these column or bar charts. I'll just pick the first one here, first 2D column chart. If I click on that, this is what comes up. And so there is a chart with the bars for each category. They're labeled here. The heights of the bars correspond to the frequencies. And of course, we could change the title. There's other things you could do to change the formatting or pick different chart styles. But that's the basic idea behind making a Pareto chart in Excel. And as long as we're talking about bar charts, let me mention a couple other variations. A Pareto chart is one kind, a histogram is one kind. There are other kinds of bar graphs. A compound bar graph displays 2 or more related things side by side. So instead of just having 1 bar for each category, you might have the same thing but in 2 different years or something like that. So you might have for each category 2 related things shown by 2 different color bars next to one another. And a component bar graph is where each bar, each category, is made up of 2 or more components. So it's like each bar is split into more than one part, and different colors are used to show the different parts. So I'm going to end this video here and come back in the next video and talk about some other kinds of graphs.